This is a 17-page manual that we just adopted this year. I will give you the direct information of how to find that, but we wanted to cover it in detail today within, say, 45 minutes to an hour, just a quick overview of some things we wanted to highlight on at camp and to protect you and to protect our campers. But the reasons we volunteer is something I put in the first section of the training manual. And for those of you that print out a copy of this later, you'll be able to read through these in detail. But I think it's important that we cover this. The reason that we volunteer for camp is not to get a partially funded trip to Dollywood. It's not to have a time with our friends that we only get to see 2 weeks out of the year. And it's great and well that you do that on the Saturday and Sunday before camp begins, but Monday through Wednesday of junior camp and Monday through Friday of teen camp, our investment is in the children that we see and the teenagers and the juniors that we see throughout the entire camping period. There are 5 things I wanted to cover about the reasons behind we volunteer. And the first is that we want to make an eternal impact on a child's life. The Jesuits believed that if they could have a child up until 8 years old, they could have him convinced and turned a Jesuit and for the rest of his life. And while we're not a part of Catholic conspiracy, I think modern psychology teaches us by age 11, most children have 85% of their worldviews developed. The only remaining percentages of those worldviews are only social aspects. It's how to operate. But the way they view the world and through the lens that they see the world is developed by 11. We have an important time that we're part and working and trying to invest in a child's life for just those few moments of a week to try to teach them what Christianity is and what the face of real Christianity looks like. We were trying to train them to be servants. We were trying to train them to give, like Oswald Chambers' title of his book, their utmost for his highest. And we want to make that eternal impact on something. The quote that I put as far as an eternal impact part of the volunteer manual is, the greatest danger is not wasting your life, but wholeheartedly spending it on something that has no eternal value. And several of you are pursuing careers. Several of you are going to join us from college. You're making plans and goals and dreams for your life. But there is nothing better than what you can do is take those few days that we have with these children, make them remember you, make an impact on their life, and then your influence can continue to the next generation. We talk about preachers of days gone by that have had more lasting impacts than, say, the founding fathers of America. We talk about being like Spurgeon and Moody. We talk about the Apostle Paul 2,000 years later. And these young boys and girls can have that same influence from you. And they can remember it and pass it on to their children. So if you want an eternal impact, the greatest investment you can take is in a child's life. The second thing we want to do is that we want to take the next generation of Christianity farther. The goal of education should always be that the student surpasses the teacher. I am a public school educator, and that is my ultimate goal, is that any child that walks into my classroom, they're going to gain my knowledge and then advance farther on that knowledge. With Christianity, we have a dire need in this nation to take this next generation farther than we've gone. We've failed in our attempts for a national revival. Over the last decades, the church has produced nothing along the strategic level of what we need, such as the Welsh revival or the revivals in Britain or the revivals in the early colonies of America. We need that in this day. I hear often that we've often relegated ourselves, that we're in the last days, and because we're in the last days, we're just getting the last few twilight gleanings, and we're just getting the last few ears of corn that we have to dig through. But I do believe God is still able to send a complete national revival and change the entire scheme of the world. People talk about Gog and Magog with Russia and China being developed right now. That's always been true, Brother Dwayne, and I think that's always. We have always stationed ourselves at the end time. Paul thought it was going to happen, and we think it's going to happen. That gives us no excuse to challenge this next generation to go farther than we did.
In fact, it challenges us to go further than they have gone, Brother Levi.
We want them to develop a spiritual discipline that lasts their entire life. That's the reason we put in personal devotion time, because if they're going to be successful, and definitely within the coming decades, I see things coming down political spectrum and in the global world, in the global spectrum, that are going to negatively influence this generation. And unless we have them with strict spiritual discipline, I believe we're going to lose the face of Christianity as we see it now. We believe God is still interested in national revival, and we believe God can operate through children. I wholeheartedly believe that God can operate through children. You're looking at, Brother Dwayne, you were saved at 7? Now it's your call to preach at 10. I was saved at 6, and now it's my call to preach at 13. Preacher, you were saved at
At
13, and now they're called to preach at 19. We believe in these teenage years. We believe they are fundamentally developed as a part of the Christian life. Most of the calls to service happen at this young age, and we are interested in getting all that God wants out of each of these children. We're interested in raising up the next Spurgeon. We're interested in raising up the next Moody, the David Livingstons, the Hudson Taylors, the Adoniram Judsons. We're waiting for God to change the world to the face of these children. If you don't believe that, then you have no reason to volunteer. I believe that God can win the #1 general in Assyria through a little maid girl. I believe that he can change the national revival with an 8-year-old king. I believe he can take a teenage shepherd and kill the champion of the Philistines. Take 4 young men out of their home territory and make a decree in Babylon that their God is the true God of the earth. I believe that God can still operate like that, and he still has an interest in these children's lives. But as far as the practical side of youth camp, you notice that on your signature packet that Brother Dwayne sends out as a volunteer packet, there is a code of conduct. We adhere to this code of conduct because we want to set the highest example possible to these kids. Whether or not you feel this same way in your personal convictions, we ask that while you are with us at camp, if you stay for both camps for the week and a half that you are on the camp scene, that you adhere to these strict guidelines. We hold ourselves to this, and we want to promote modesty, clean living, right dress, the right atmosphere, the right attitude is one of the more important things that I've seen. Smiles on faces all the time. Be happy to be there. We realize you're not going to be getting any sleep. We realize that you're going to have kids running around you the entire time. But that is part of the code of conduct. Anybody that does not follow these, you'll see stated at the last part, we will call someone to come pick you up and remove you from our campuses. Brother Dwayne has no hesitation doing that, and he is a scary individual when you get on his negative side. Preacher, not so much. But he will be operating on the physical removal part of you from camp. But you can read through those detailed procedures on your own, and I trust that you'll read them in detail, and that when you sign your name to the dotted line, you will agree to not only operate according to its guidelines, but make sure you're dressed according to those guidelines. The other practical part is the general camp procedures. What I put is a checklist of things that you could probably go through. This was designed more toward junior camp because this is when we have to have the greatest management skills. We're dealing with 6-year-olds to 12-year-olds, and they are sort of like herding cats. You can't all get them heading in the same direction at the same time. But the more prepared, the more organized, the more routinely structured you are, the better you're going to be at leading this group effectively. Regardless if you've got 26-year-olds, and that's not the age 26, that's 20 individual 6-year-olds. Regardless if you've got them, if you've got 4 12-year-olds, if you prepare yourself by having organization and structure, they will follow the guidelines. Children thrive off routine, and that is something we seek to set at camp in the best way possible. It seems like sometimes it's organized chaos, but at least we are following the same procedures and routine on a daily basis. In the morning, the most important element that you can do is rise before all the campers in your group. Now, I personally have a 3-year-old at home that gets up at 6:30 every morning, no matter what day of the week it is, and no matter what time he went to bed. And you're going to have some 8-year-olds that follow that exact same procedure. So that means if you find that, you need to get up at 6. And the reason you need to get up at 6 is to prepare yourself for the day. You will have to have one step ahead of them. If not, you're going to be lagging the entire day. And go ahead and promise you that if you get up after your campers and they're slapping you on the forehead saying, Brother Levi, you need to get up. Brother Matthew, you need to get up. We've got to go. It's breakfast time.
That's not a good day.
That's not a good day because you have no idea what they've done in your shoes. You have no idea what they've done with the pants you had picked out or the skirt you had picked out to wear that day. You have no idea where the itching powder went that they brought with them from home. Unless you're one step ahead of them, I can guarantee almost absolute failure at management. But not only rise before all of them, make sure you read your Bible. If it's just for a few verses, you need to be spiritually put into. You need to fill your tank before you begin to spend your entire day filling their tanks. And the only way you can do that is if you're putting something in. It is a very dry service when you're operating with kids with absolutely no spiritual discernment or spiritual development in your own character. In fact, not only is it a very dry day, it's a very negative day. And you're going to have behavior problems, and you're going to lose your temper, and you're going to lose your cool, and you're going to become irritable, and you're going to become tired and fussy, and they will become tired and fussy too, unless we're pulling our entire hearts and pouring them out into them. call for tomorrow morning. But either way, we're trying to operate on 3 different digital levels right now with people that are very limited in digital technology, me being number 1. But not only that, number 3 on the list of the checklist is when you get them up, smile. No matter how not pretty your smile is, and I know several of you are a scary face to wake up to in the morning, if you smile to that child, that attitude is going to be prevalent their entire day. Make sure you get everything packed away before breakfast. Make sure there's no odds and ends that don't need to be taken care of. In the years past, pants and shirts and socks have wound up in some pretty unfathomable places. Miss Amy has threatened to take a large burn pile on the last day of camp and burn those items right there before all the campers. But either way, make sure they've got their clean clothes and dirty clothes segregated. The last thing you want is stinky pants that were worn the day before and water activities showing up in the morning service, and your entire group is going, "Who's that?"
You kind of have to remember you have to be mother and father to your group at all times.
Yes.
They don't know how to do those things that you're expecting them to do.
Yeah. Once you get them packed away, wake up your campers in order. This is specifically important to ladies. You're going to have some girls that take 2 minutes in the shower. You're going to have some of your camper girls that take 15 minutes in the shower. Nobody else should take over 15 minutes in the shower. That's going to run our water supply low. But knowing the difference between each of those campers that you have would be the order you wake them up in the morning. The 15-minute girl, she needs to go first. The 2-minute girl, she needs to go last. But either way, make sure you're segregating them in order. Make sure you know which ones you've got to get up and get ready. Make sure you know which ones are pokey. Like myself, I need to get up earlier than everybody else because I'm slow at getting the start on the day. Then have group prayer with them. Read the Bible with them. Share that same attitude. Share what God taught you that morning during morning devotion. Go ahead and start the day by pouring into them before we even go to camp-wide devotions. Be alert. Our favorite theme song is Alive, Alert, Awake, Enthusiastic. That's Brother Mark's favorite theme song. But not only that, double check before you leave the dorms that they have everything. Includes the schedule and the itinerary for the day. Make sure that they're carrying anything that they might need for morning games with them. I've seen in years past on that first full day of camp on that Tuesday, a lot of kids have to go running back to the dorms. I think I saw 25 boys just last year during that first full day of camp have to go running back to the dorms to go get something that they forgot to play the games with. Make sure you're in charge of that. Go ahead and get a step on it. Make sure that each kid, if you need to, bring sticky notes with you and hand it to them. Say, this is the list of stuff you need to bring today. And if it's that, that's their own fault. Yes, you should bring an alarm clock. Specifically, I got this one, this from Katie Karaskevitz. I hope I got your last name right, but that is
Stanton, Virginia, Miss Katie.
Stanton, Virginia. Thank you for joining us, Miss Katie. But yes, you should bring an alarm clock. You might want to invest, Brother Dwayne. What's the rule on cell phone policy as far as volunteer team leads? They can keep their cell phone.
The idea is they're not to be using it. They're certainly never to allow that child to use that phone, but they can use the phone for their alarm purposes. If I catch them texting their boyfriend, they're in big trouble.
Yeah, your phone is not to be used at any time during the day around your children because they'll want to use it. And if you're on your telephone, you're not watching children.
Yes, exactly.
The only exception to that's your camera.
You may use the camera on your cell phone. At the end of the day, when they go to bed, if you wanted to upload pictures, things like that, I'm certain, Brother Dwayne, you'd be okay if the kids are asleep. We'll work with you on that and that sort of thing. If you're taking pictures for individual parents who want an update on their kid and you're sending them out, yeah, that's more than okay. I would recommend the cell phone because the cell phone, I know my particular phone has a vibrate-only alarm on it to wake me up while it doesn't wake everybody else in the household up. And that could be advantageous for you in a group full of 6-year-olds because as soon as they hear the alarm clock blaring, they're all going to get up too. So you won't get a head start on them without that. Brother Dwayne's mic is very loud. Brother Mark's is not. So.
I think Brother David saw that.
Okay, so Brother David's got that. But not only that, line them up and do a head count. That is emboldened on this packet, and it says always with several exclamation points. And I'm not a person that overuses exclamation points. Please do a head count at every location you arrive and at every location you depart. It is your responsibility to keep up with those kids. We have been blessed with a very cut-off facility. It's very limited as far as how far the campers can travel. But it is very scary to a 7-year-old to be left in the bathroom while his entire group is somewhere else that he does not aware of where they're at, or she is not aware.
And you don't want to be the worker who we catch one of your children away from your group.
Yeah, your kids at no time need to be alone, ever.
That's your responsibility. In fact, that is your primary responsibility, is knowing where your young people are at all times.
Then and during morning, establish a routine for how you enter the dining hall. I don't care if that's mouths, hands over your mouth, hands in the air. I don't care if it's everybody clapping at the top of their head. If you get them entered in an orderly fashion, I don't care what the routine looks like. As long as you've got a routine, you follow that for every single mealtime procedure. In the past, we've had lines begin to line up outside the door. And if we have downtime with kids like that, we're going to run into problems. There's going to be somebody that gets hurt. There's going to be somebody that gets hurt feelings. There's going to be kids that are pushing. There's going to be kids that get angry at each other. There's going to be behavior problems, like just kids doing anything kids do when they have idle time.
Anytime they're in line, Brother Levi, I would add, you're memorizing your Bible verses, you're working on your cheer, you're singing a song. Any idle time is trouble time. Don't ever forget that.
One of the things I remember Miss Nicole McKenzie did one year at Sand Mountain was she had her girls sing that, what was the song? Fill Up My Cup. Oh, yeah. Everywhere they went, they sung that song. That was it. You'd hear them all the way across the entire campground. They were singing that song, and that's an active way to have your group completely engaged.
That's correct. Anything you can do to constantly engage them.
On that bus, they can go to Dr. Fugate's Bus News website. All those bus songs are
Go
on
ahead,
there.
tell them.
If you want to go to Dr. Fugate, Jeff Fugate's bus site, I think it's busnews.com, or we can post that maybe on the website later on, but they have all those kind of bus songs or whatever. Find you one you like, learn it, and teach it to your kids.
Absolutely.
Double check for bathroom or other needs, and I put this in there because of a specific experience that I myself shared in at Sand Mountain. I had the 6-year-old group, Brother Gene, the Trask family is logged on, so there, Brother Gene will probably remember this. I had about 20 6-year-olds literally happen, and one of my boys had an accident while we were in the dining hall because somebody else was in the single bathroom that was at Sand Mountain, and he couldn't hold it himself. That was a very difficult situation to deal with 20 individual kids wanting to get in everybody else's business, and trust me, they didn't want to get in that business.
Well, in the kindness of our heart now, we work in teams of 3, Brother Levi. In those days, you didn't have anybody.
He's scarred.
Scarred for life, yes, as a matter of fact. Either way, that problem would have been completely avoided had I taken my group to the restroom, especially being the youngest group in the camp, before we entered the dining hall. I learned that lesson very quickly the next day.
We generally don't have that problem with the females and their teams. It's usually the guys and their teams. And saying hold it is not the right answer.
As another talking point as far as the bathroom, you never want to be in the restroom with a child by yourself. It's the reason we operate with double and triple team leads and helpers and things like that. In the evening service, we've had to use just 2 workers per group. Brother Dwayne had discussed possibly having an adult that has a background check stationed on the outside of each restroom. That way, it only requires either you or a helper taking each individual child to the bathroom. There'll be somebody there to not just be there, to safeguard you.
The idea is you would never be in a enclosed environment alone with a child, all right? That would be a restroom environment. If you happen to be in one of the small dorm rooms and not the general dorm rooms, you can't be in that room with just that child.
Address that totally across the board. You're never alone in an enclosed anywhere.
You can have one child in the open dorm when there's 10 adults and 15 or 20 kids in there at one time, or in the open, in the tabernacle or dining hall, but in a restroom or small dormitory or slipping off in a closet, you just cannot under any circumstances. It's not that we question you. We are trying to protect you, and that's why we put every group of children will have a team lead and 2 assistants, and if there's a necessity to remove one of those children, then it can be done with 2 of those team leads so that nobody is ever put in a position to be by themselves. And we're going to try to do we're just going to call it a restroom monitor in the evening services so that we never let a child go out of the building by themselves either. And we had been using 2 of the team leads or 2 of the team assistants to go out with that child. But if we've got a restroom assistant or a restroom monitor when you go around the corner, then only one of our adult leaders will be required to walk that child around to the restroom. And then in the restroom, there'll be an adult there, and you'll be there, so that meets the 2 people criteria.
Leave every place cleaner than when you found it. But not only that, you can assign jobs for your campers to do. That will alleviate a lot of discipline problems. And I find in my own classroom and my own experience with camps, the kids that you have a lot of discipline problems with, they do a lot better when you give them a task. When you have them with a specific responsibility, that doesn't mean every time you see a discipline problem, go ahead and give them a job to do. But if you've got somebody in your group you can trust enough, it might be a kid that's excited, always amped up and everything else, but if he can read your name list and call roll at every location you go and every kid answers here, if he can do the head count and count by himself, that'll alleviate your stress at having to do one more activity. If you just tell that child, well, I got my head count? Yep, we got 22. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Did you do a name call? Yes, we did a name call already, and it's done for you. That will alleviate a lot of your stress. But then again, you kind of double check there because you don't want to be the one to forget a kid. But giving them a job will alleviate your stress. Service and morning games, same thing. Find a routine that works while you're seated there. Be going over Bible verses. Be going back through your group's cheer. That's going to kind of unite that group. Make sure every camper participates. They have to sign a waiver that they're going to participate in the activities. If you have a problem with non-participation, you see Brother Dwayne, you see Brother Mark, you see myself, Brother Gene Trask is going to be joining us that week at camp. You see him, or Brother David Martin. If you have trouble finding Brother David, if the sun's shining, just look for the gleam. He's the one operating the sound right now.
You'll be provided a printout within a couple of hours of registration from our registration system with your group, and on there you will be notified of 4 things that you'll need to know. Number 1, we'll make sure that you're aware of any activities that their parents have said they cannot or should not participate in. You'll know of any allergies, particularly things like bee stings or so forth. Any food restrictions will be mentioned. Any health concerns will be mentioned. And they'll all be provided along with any medications that child has to take, which we'll have a registered nurse on scene. Miss Allison Church will be with us, and she'll be taking care of any of the medication issues that might come up. You'll have to make yourself familiar with that so that you can help implement that and monitor that throughout the course of the week.
And that is important. We actually have some of the children that come with us that have behavior needs and modifications, but not only that, physical disabilities that they can't participate in some activities. But we gear those morning games and activities that any child could participate in one of them. So if you've got a kid that's limited in skills and things like that, marshmallow spit is not very hard. I don't think we've got any restriction.
I mean, I win every year.
He does win every year. Brother Mark wins the marshmallow spit every year. But Chubby Bunny, things like that.
I'm not talented.
It's just pure force. That's what it is, just pure force.
But
I noticed you didn't comment on that. You just put it right
that's hot air. That's
Brother Levi's a smart fella. He just says, I'm not going to comment.
lunch is the same as breakfast. Make sure you're following the routine. Afternoon activities, please make sure your campers are dressed appropriately. This comes with the responsibility of being their mother. Yes, it might be a scary thought. I don't know if Brother EJ is going to join us this year, but if EJ Reese were somebody's mother, that would be scary to me. But either way, don't let your kids wear the dress shoes to afternoon activities, specifically on water day or when we go the first day to the facilities that we're going to be using at Riverside Military Academy. Please don't let them come in their nice dress loafers that they're going to be wearing for service that afternoon.
We will prep you
Yes.
beforehand so you know what your children are to expect.
Yes.
And let me add, we're definitely going to be doing off-campus activity. Brother Levi will talk a little bit more about that shortly. But we will tell you what to have for each of your campers. Yes. And if we need to help you find some Walmart bags to put that stuff in, we can certainly do that. But here's where I want to jump in on that, Brother Levi, and say we will have 125 to 150 junior campers, and somebody will have a camper that has nothing. They don't have the right underclothes. They don't have play clothes. They came with what they had on. That's not your problem. You just need to send one of your assistants to any of us or our wives, and we'll take care of that. Okay, don't fret over that. It's happened over and over and over again, but it will have to. Just know that it's going to happen. Don't embarrass the child. Don't question the child. Don't get on to the child. It's not the child's fault. We'll take care of that.
Yes, we'll make sure every camper has the ability to participate regardless of their limitations and that sort of thing. And I'll talk about the afternoon activities and mention just a few things. You will receive a detailed itinerary from me the first day of camp that you get there within that first breakfast before the campers ever start arriving of exactly what we will be doing at exactly what time slot we will be doing them. When I say that we have to be organized, that's part of the junior camp success. Sting camp, not so much. It runs by and operates by its own clock. Teenagers give you a little bit of leeway, a little bit of flexibility as far as time limitations. But at junior camp, if it says 4:30 on the clock, you better be at your location at 4:30.
The first one to be embarrassed will not be the campers.
Yeah. But afternoon
I
activities.
hope you understand that.
Things like white shirts for water games. Ladies, just please monitor that. Make sure they're not wearing that. Same thing for guys.
Well, use it as an opportunity to teach, too.
Yes.
You can explain why you're saying don't wear that.
Be prepared and on time. Name call, head count, same thing, procedures there. If your clothes get messy, and on Tuesday afternoon we will be having water games supplied by Jitterbug, which is the rental company that we've used in the past, and we have a water slide, we have a water obstacle course, we have a dunk booth, we have 2 water slides, 2 obstacle courses. We divide the boys from the girls. The boys have all of theirs on one side of the field. The girls have all theirs on one side of the field. We keep water pumped to those, and you will have fun there. The obstacle courses are made for 6 to 8 to 10 to 12-year-olds. And if you're 17 and you come running down the slip and slide, chances are you're going to be moving very quickly by the end of it. We've got Brother Matt Panther here, and he went in the slip and slide last year. And a couple of our boys were having fun with that, as much fun as with the kids, and I support that wholeheartedly. Yeah. The kids need to see you having a good time.
I think they need to see you roll right over the top of that barrier at the end.
I have done that too.
If your clothes get messy, and on that day they will, they cut our grass at the camp about 1 inch from the ground, and they leave the clippings right where they're at. So by the time the water gets done, we have some of the nastiest water supply to dump out from the bottom of those slides at camp. Your clothes are going to be covered in them. The only problem is that Georgia in July, it pours down about a 4-inch rain every afternoon, especially during camp season. No matter if it's been dry for the last 3 years, the week we have camp, it's going to rain the first day. And we're talking thunder, lightning, hail, wind, gust, everything. But in the past, a lot of our team leads have just hung their dirty clothes on the outside of the room, which is great for drying clothes. The only problem is there was a dark, foreboding cloud in the distance, and they could have recognized it's about to rain and blow our clothes everywhere, and they're just going to get even more wet. But they failed to realize that without looking up at the weather. I'm a little worried about that. Jesus told the Pharisees that they could tell the signs and the weather and the seasons by the heavens. We can't even do that anymore, so I doubt we'll be triggered onto the Lord's second coming. But please, put it somewhere where there's air circulation. If it looks like rain, go into your bathroom. Turn the fan on. Get air pulled in. Crack the window. A cracked window produces more air circulation across a greater distance than a full-blown open window. Do not, special request from Brother Nathan Nix, do not hang wet clothes over the air conditioners unless you want to spend a night in a hot, humid room with stinky children. That is my advice. Put it in somewhere that gets air circulation and a draft. If we can't do it outside, put it in the bathrooms.
I know that I am talking to 15, 16, 17-year-olds which traditionally don't have any sense, but use some sense. If you need to suggest that your children, your young folks, your team rinse their clothes off, or if you need to have access to a water hose behind one of the buildings so you can wash the mud and the grass off of them before they get in the showers. Let us know. We can help arrange that. But you've got to be a parent. And that's going to be tough on some of you because you've never tried that before, but it's time to give it a try.
PDT is personal devotion time. That is meant for you as much as it is for the kids. You're going to lead by example on that. If you're over there playing Candy Crush Saga, Pet Rescue Saga, what else we got? Farm Rescue. If you're playing that, your kids are watching you, they're not going to be interested in their personal devotion either.
Well, not only you're violating a major rule by using that electronic device for something other than spiritual applications.
Yes. But if you read your Bible on a Kindle or anything like that, if you read your Bible on your phone, that's more than okay.
Brother Levi's trying to salvage that.
Yeah. But either way, set the example there. What I would do is we usually, with teen camp, we'll do 30 minutes to 45 minutes. With junior camp, we'll do 15 to 20 minutes. I'll answer that in just a moment. But we'll do 15 to 20 minutes. If you can, set the example. And what I would do is I would set a regular time that I got up for my devotion and went around and talked maybe to one kid and asked them, what's God showing you? Can I help you pray for something? Is there something you want God to do in your life right now? That, or just check on them and make sure they're reading their Bible. I'll never forget when we were on Roach Hollow Road, when we told the kids we were going to have a meditation time, which was a PDT time. We had one child cross his legs in Buddhist style, go out full fingers and hum to himself for 30 minutes.
This is true.
That is not Bible meditation. I don't know what sort of level of Zen he was operating at, but
It did make for a good picture, though. I hate to say that, but I did.
If his cabin leader would have approached him, tap him on the shoulder, and say, look, we just need to get a Bible out. We need to pray, and we need to talk to God. That's what you're going to want to do during personal devotion time.
And you may have to lead by example. And Brother Levi, I mean by that, you may have to step them through what you're doing. Okay, let's take our Bibles and read for 5 minutes. Yeah. And remember, if you're dealing with our 6-year-olds, or which we don't have many of those, but 7-year-olds even, they're not going to be able to take their Bible and read on their own. So you may have to take that devotion time and read to them.
This is not nap time for counselors. I'm going to put that. No time is nap time for counselors at any given point. Supper or dinner, whichever way you want to say it. Same routine as breakfast and devotion time. The service, we do sometimes in the teen camp get a lot of people that put on their full-on gigs out for service times. They dress like they're going to church service. With juniors, not so much, which is something I appreciate in the camp atmosphere. We'll pull away from what our religious vestments kind of and withdraw just ourselves wholeheartedly on that. But if your campers want to get themselves ready for church, make sure they're adequately prepared for that. Try to keep them awake during service. That is important. But then those 10, 6-year-olds that we might have coming this year, last night after and my goal is to wear them out completely. The last night after I've worn them out completely, you might have a few of those after 40 minutes of preaching that are beginning to nod. Just bear with them. Be patient with them. We had one kid
Be mindful of their age and their limitations. That's correct.
We had one kid at Camp Canaan that fell asleep in the altar that time and extended the altar call for, 25, 30 minutes. His counselor would have been aware. Probably the most peaceful sleep he ever got, but either way. During lights out time, we will come to your room and dorm with cookies and milk for these kids. These are still children that we are dealing with from somebody. Teens, I'm sorry, you're not getting that. We're lucky just to get you in bed. But you will have canteen time after that, and you'll have your supply of stuff you appreciate more than milk and cookies. Make sure each camper has all their stuff prepared for bed. Campers will say if something's missing, somebody stole it. Immediately, if they've misplaced their watch, automatically someone has stolen their watch.
They surely didn't leave anyway.
Don't sound alarm.
Yes, just keep up with their things for them. And tell them, did you have that from earlier today? Did you make sure your socks weren't in the clean clothes part of your suitcase? Did you put them in a bag? Might be a good idea if you wanted to just grab a couple of trash bags for each camper, or bring some grocery bags to put their dirty clothes in. so they can keep them separated for the entire week. When you're putting lights out, tuck away all your last-minute items. Spend some time with each of the campers. Just ask them, how was the day? Did you like it? Did you have fun? Anything you learned today? What did you like best? Spend some time getting to know them.
And realize this, if you're going to have a child get homesick, it will be at bedtime.
Yes.
And so you need to be prepared. And if you can't console, if you're unable to console a child, you come get Brother Levi, come get myself, Brother Dwayne, and we'll come and help you. But just be prepared that if they're going to get homesick, upset, cry, some of them will cry because they get upset because that's the time they want their mom or want their dad. That will be that time.
Yeah.
And honestly, one reason we keep them busy during the day is because during dead time is when they get to thinking about, hey, my mom's not here, my dad's not here, I'm away from home. And that's one of the purposes of keeping them so busy is so they don't have dead time to think about home. But if it does present itself, it will present itself at bedtime.
Yes, it most definitely will. Pray. That usually calms down some junior campers. We learned in a scenario 2 years ago with a camper that was staying with Brother Titus Chris was in his cabin. The first night he got homesick and got worried and everything else, and he was in tears and wound up spending, probably an hour consoling him. The next night we found out that if we just pray with him, he went to sleep within about 2 minutes. That's all it took was just prayer.
And ended up having to take him home that first
and
night.
that take him home the second night. And the second night he came back, and the simple solution was a 30-second prayer lasting him for about 2 minutes. And you would think at a Christian camp, specifically with some of us in charge, we would have thought of that to begin with, but we did not. Pray them. And then the last point on your checklist is go to bed yourself. I don't care if you have to tell one of your 14-year-old assistants to, and I will say this, shut up and go to sleep. Brian Copeland can be blamed for years of sleep lag on me for the next day because he wanted to be in conversation with me. And I will say that over immediate air and on a global audience, that by the end of the week I was irritated as him as much as any of the campers. But please tell them, guys, it's lights out. We need to get prepared for tomorrow. We need our full beauty sleeping and everything else. The Trask family is laughing at me. Camper behavior is much the same. I attached the exact same thing that they signed their name to the dotted line. Use this sheet as your friend. The other one you are responsible for, but the camper behavior sheet is your friend. The reason this is your friend is because you can look at these dotted lines and these nice printed words and you can tell your campers you signed your name to participate. Your parents said we could do anything we wanted to. Which is why you got to leave your electronic devices at home and things like that. In-house discipline. We prefer...
But Levi, before you jump to that, your campers are abiding by the same code of conduct that you're abiding by. There is actually no, to the best of my knowledge, Brother Mark, there's no verbiage difference between the document that you signed as a potential volunteer and the document that the camper signs and their parent signs. Now, I say that because Brother Mark and I, Brother Levi, we would be inclined to have a little mercy on a new camper that needs to learn, but not on a worker that should have known. Mm-hmm. And so you lead your cabin by being the first one to follow those directives, and then they will follow you, and they will follow those directives, which we... Outside of potentially a little bit of dress issues, you won't have a whole lot of issues with your junior campers presently.
Yeah. And then if you do, you are going to have discipline issues. Went to the Big Horn Mountains with Brother Dwayne one year. We played Cowboys and Indians, quite literally, for an entire week with no running water. And I remember one specific 7-year-old that I had that was Leonard. You remember Leonard? Leonard, I love Leonard, but if I would have had a successful in-house discipline system that I learned many years later, then I would have not had as many problems out of him as I did. By the end of the week, I fell in love with the kid, and still to this day have him on my heart. And remembering on a Saturday like this, before camp, and that happened years ago. 3-strike system is what I like to use mainly because I like baseball. Three strikes works good for a group as a whole or an individual camper. If I was looking over here at Matthew Panther, which is over here, and I said, Brother Matthew, you need to stop talking, that's number one. You need to stop texting, that's strike number two. And if later in the day I saw him twirling around looking at invisible elephants across the field, I would say, Matthew, that's strike number three. You get to set out of our next activity for 5 minutes. My discipline's handled. I can even do that if I explain the system to my campers. I can look at Matthew and I can hold up a finger number one. And then if he's doing something else, I can hold up finger number two. Either way, I don't have to communicate that with any of the campers if they're already familiar with the system. Don't just hold up two fingers and expect them to understand what you mean by that. They're going to look back at you and do that at the same time. Code word works for getting their attention. I will use that as a group as a whole in junior camp. And my code word is junior campers. And my response that I'm expecting out of them is yes, sir, and then dead silence. That worked well for us in the past. We're going to continue that. We use that in Bible school in Awana. Just saw it work just 2 days ago. And that works as far as small group, whole group. That's the one I'll be using. If you wanted to use the same thing with your group, it would reinstate the purpose of that as long as you expect silence afterwards. And then violating personal space. Miss Leela Copley is the one to thank for this when she sent this suggestion in at Sand Mountains training a few years ago. She said some of the best discipline strategies exist. Let's say Brother Dwayne is the behavior problem, and he's sitting there acting up. If I just come over here and put my hand on his shoulder, or even if I just come over here and stand, he's going to solve the problem. Usually I've seen it work from public school kids to Christian school kids to homeschool kids to any kids.
Well, Brother Levi, we actually, when I was in the public arena and I conducted a lot of meetings, when you had someone sitting around the round table that wanted to dominate or wanted to disrupt or wanted to distract, we taught our educators that they were to go stand behind the seat of that individual so that they could get them back under control easily by just that space.
Yeah, that was Scott Woodson.
Hey, while they're looking at that, listen to me. You're not God. You're not their pastor. You're not their parent. But you can't just be their friend. You're their cabin counselor. And so keep in perspective that you are a cabin counselor. Develop a communication with them. Develop a strategy with them, but make sure they understand that you're the authority in that cabin, and they're the subordinates, and I mean that in the right attitude, not the right way. But you can love them along, but you'll never push them along. So make sure that you focus your energy on loving them into discipline.
Brother Dwayne, if you can, cover the parent part of that. Would you talk with him about how we're going to treat parents in junior camp? We specifically had a problem with.
All right, we have backed up and re-emphasized something that we really intended to happen anyway, and that was that we are not going to allow parents or church leaders in the dormitories. All right, so of course they will be there when they're bringing in the luggage and getting everybody set up, but once they are
Well, Dwayne, let me interrupt.
Pass registration.
I think we got some folks maybe got on late onto the information, and you don't know how to sign and ask a question. If you will go to www.todaysmeet.com/, P as in Paul, the character number 2, Y as in yo-yo, C as in Charles. And you can sign in and look at all these questions. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's fine. But we understand that parent's presence or that youth leader's presence actually kind of distracts from your ability to manage your children during their time with us. And so we have had a session this morning where we met with church youth leaders, and we emphasized the fact that we background check everyone who is of age that works in any of our sleeping quarters with our children, and that we're not going to allow the parents or the other church leaders to come into the dormitories at night. And we've additionally asked them to have extremely limited contact with those children in game time, activity time, and service time. So there to be with you. If you have a problem with a parent, don't try to handle that. Just let one of us know.
Yes,
and if we need to speak to someone, we'll speak to someone.
If that parent speaks rudely to you, And you need to understand something. A lot of these kids, some of these kids may be coming to camp for the first time. They've never been separated from their parents. And it's honestly harder on the parent than it is the child. If you have a problem, they speak to you inappropriately, do not return that in the same manner. You speak to an adult, you speak to that adult with courtesy and respect, and then you find myself, Brother Levi, Brother David, or Brother Dwayne, and we will handle that. Do not return that same kind of attitude back to that adult. You just be kind, come find one of us, and we'll handle that situation.
One other thing about parents, while their child may see them as a parent, familiar, comfortable with, if they walk into your dorm, 75 other campers are seeing them as a stranger. And that is important when you don't do that. If a camper comes to your dorm at night, requesting that they see their child, of course, send someone back to get the child. Brother Dwayne's comfortable with letting them have that, hey, good night, buddy, we're still here, sort of conversations. We're going to limit that.
We're actually trying to avoid that completely.
Yes.
We may just need to have if there's parents, us have a meeting with them.
First thing,
Yes.
first thing when they get here.
Maybe head some of that off.
If there's going to be a good night, it needs to be said at canteen or.
Yes. One other thing I wanted to cover about discipline procedures, I skipped a page in the manual. Never, ever strike a child. Never lay your hand on a child in anger. You're going to enter into a wealth of problems that we can't cover you legally for, period, if you do that. But also never yell at your group.
Exactly.
Same thing.
Now yell with your group.
Yes.
But don't
only-
yell at your group.
In fact, let me quote you. Never yell at the top of your lungs at your group. Use a stern voice. The only time you should yell at them is when they're running home during kickball, when they're competing in a competition and that sort of thing. But never yell at them. If they see you lose their cool, they're going to know that and try to push you to that limit over and over and over again just to see the volatile reaction happen again.
And two, it's very easy, especially if you have a child that gives you trouble for the first couple of hours of camp. You've got to use some discernment and judgment on your part, because you don't want to center all your energy and focus all your time on that child. Number one, you're going to make the child miserable. Number two, you're going to make yourself miserable. And number three, and maybe more importantly, you're going to neglect the other 15 kids that you're not going to be dealing with.
Never embarrass a camper by discipline strategies. If you snap a finger, if you look at them with a stare until you get their attention, and you hold up the strike system if you wanted to use that, or just shake your head no. Believe me, you are taken a lot more seriously if you use the same maintain level voice that you always do. If you violate their personal space and say, "No, Brother Dwayne, if you continue that, you will have to go see camp administration."
That's right. That's right.
You are scarier that way, I promise you.
And you can use some sense. Don't disrupt the service trying to discipline your camper. I've seen counselors that created more of a stir and a distraction in a meeting by trying to make a child be quiet than the child was doing by talking. Not that the talking was right, but the appropriate place to do that is to have you or one of your assistants, and you just need to communicate to move over and sit beside them. If you got two talking, sit between them. It's just very easily handled. If the three of you as your counselors are all sitting on one end of the pew, you're not sitting right. Spread out with them. Sit 3 or 4 on each side. That way you've got yourselves in the middle of them to be able to deal with them.
Try to find a balance in that. Just because the kid's talking too much doesn't mean they're going to sit out of all their activities. But then likewise, if you've got 2 kids fighting, please come find one of us. And we'll cover that just a little bit later. Parents, we have covered. I did have a question about the rooms that I just wanted to cover. It said, could you put command hooks up in the smaller style rooms for towels? Command strips are the ones that remove themselves off the wall.
Well, actually, I think the camp would not have a problem with
As
that.
long as they're the ones,
But
Ms. Allison, I would say as long as it's the ones that's got the little clear glue that you can pull off the wall when they're done, I don't think that'll be a problem.
Yeah.
that might be something we
They don't
look
take
at.
it, yeah.
doing.
Just the pull
You-
strip,
Yeah.
large hanger
They
kind.
don't
I
take
think that would
it
be.
off the wall or anything.
We
That would be
might
a-
look at doing that unilaterally,
That's a
Brother
good
Mark.
idea. That's a good idea.
That is a fantastic idea. Once again, send any other questions, daysmeet.com/P2YC.
Since we're still going down this page, I just want to reiterate again, do not let those kids use your cell phone, okay? If a kid gets saved on Monday night, we need to communicate with the parent.
That's
We'll make arrangements to do that, or we'll put them with their church leader
Yes.
and let them do that. We're not here to be mean or crude, but you enter into a particular liability when you hand that child your phone and they're using it. And you don't need to do that. They'll end up calling mama at home, and when they get on the phone with mama, they're going to burst into tears. And the next thing I know, 3 hours later,
A mom's calling us.
I got a mother's calling me, or a mother's standing here waiting, and it wasn't necessary. If you would have just followed the rules and not let them use the phone, they wouldn't have had that problem. Okay, Children are children.
Anything else you want to add to that? Leading a child to Christ is probably one of the more important, probably the most important area of this training manual. Some of you have never led anybody to the Lord. I challenge you to read a book on soul winning before you go. Make sure you're comfortable enough with your Bible. I mentioned something about the Romans road
Speak to your
here.
pastor if you've
Yeah.
got some questions in advance, too.
Get some verses. One of the greatest methodologies that I have found, and it's one that Paul used, anywhere that Paul went before anybody that ever spoke of, he talked about the road to Damascus. The only one that's left out of that is when he spoke at Mars Hill. But when he went before Felix and Agrippa, he said, I just know what happened to me. On the road to Damascus, Christ appeared to me, and then I was converted. That same thing can work for you. Explain to them how you got saved. And that's usually biblically accurate if you're truly saved. But a couple of pointers that I just wanted to pull out. You can read these in details. God moves in emotions, but not always. You could have an 8-year-old that is crying in tears during the evening service. That might not be conviction. It might be because they missed their mama. But likewise, you could have a 6-year-old under dire conviction and not shed a tear. They don't have the repercussions of sin that we have. The worst thing that they've done is might have told a lie to a parent or stolen a cookie out of the cookie jar. All right, that sort of contrast and conviction of sin isn't going to be as great as a 20-year-old who's lived in sin for the last 5 years. A 6-year-old is going to portray that differently. Sometimes we get those textbook responses where they are weeping and they are under conviction, but don't look for those emotional signs. The greatest tool you've got in your tool belt is discernment. And the only way you're going to pick up discernment is understanding the character and the nature of God. And the only way you can understand anybody's character or nature is by spending time with them. That's why we stress the wake up early, pray, read your Bible, take personal devotion time and make it your personal devotion. Make sure before the evening service that you are prayed up and prepared to recognize God moving during the service time.
Ask God for that.
Ask God for that. You've got the greatest soul winner in all eternity at your disposal. You can literally pray and ask God, help me when I'm dealing with this child to recognize, give me the words to say, give me the responses I need. Another important thing is that most of our kids can tell you, the ones that we bring to camp, why they need to be saved before God ever speaks to them. They can tell you, I need to be saved because I'm going to hell. And they can tell you that by a textbook response, but there's not under any conviction.
I recently heard a message, and the preacher preaching did a great job entitled that Presumptuous Salvation. Mm-hmm. They know all the right words, they know all the right terminology, but they've never realized that they have to personally ask Christ to save them.
That's true. That is the difference between the head knowledge and heart knowledge.
Ask open-ended questions. Do not ask yes/no questions. You don't ask, is the Lord dealing with you? Ask them, how's the Lord dealing with you? What's he saying to you? Let them, is the Lord dealing with you? Every young one's going to say, yes. Do you want to get saved? Yes. Why do you need to get saved? I'm a sinner. Question there, who told you you was a sinner?
Brother Dwayne did.
Brother Dwayne did that. Then you know there's a following. I mean,
They're not ready.
That happened with my own son. I mean, Carter said, Daddy, you told me I was a sinner. Well, that's not enough. The Holy Ghost has got to deal with them. So ask open-ended, not yes/no questions.
And you don't ask something like this either, Brother Mark. You don't want to go to hell, do you?
Yeah, none of them want to go to hell. And you got to understand, a little guy will believe just exactly what you tell him. And what you've got to do is ask questions. And understand this, a 6-year-old's not going to talk to you in the same language that necessarily an adult might. They may not say, I'm under conviction. They may not know that word. You're going to have to listen. A 6-year-old talks like a 6-year-old, not a 26-year-old. So if you understand, you're going to have to listen to what they're saying. Yeah. And it may not be necessarily in religious terminology. They're going to explain the best way a child will do. They're going to tell you the way they feel in their heart.
Yes.
We do not have a tote board.
No.
We do not have a counter at the back of the auditorium where we're trying to roll up a big number to say we had so many saved in camp. I'll be honest, we had a great year of harvest last year. We had a new group of campers in Teen Week, a lot of younger campers, and we probably saw more saved in 1 week of camp last year than we've seen in several years. At the end of the week, we didn't know what that number was. We estimated, we tried to figure it out so we could report. But my point is, we don't have any preconceived goal that says we got to have 40 saved or we got to have 30 junior campers saved. We want the ones that the Lord deals with, that He calls, and that genuinely get saved. We're not interested in that profession. We're interested in that possession, as you say there, number 3, brother.
Pulling a profession out of a child is not a good thing.
It's easy to do.
I promise, if I can talk to a kid long enough, I can get them thinking they're saved. It's one thing to deal with a 17-year-old rebellious boy in the altar for 30 minutes. It's another thing entirely to deal with a 7-year-old there for 30 minutes.
Brother Levi, let me just throw in there that, and you may have it further down in here, but if you're having trouble, if you can't get clear, or if you're uncomfortable with that child, dealing with that child yourself, get the attention of one of the adults, men or women appropriately. We've been around on the block, and we can come in and help you, you know.
Brother David, walk out of here just so, because there might be some new kids that have never seen Brother David as well. Brother David and Brother Levi work with our children here, and I mean any of us 4. Brother Levi works with our children, Brother David works with our teenagers, and Brother David dealt with my own son, Carter. But just let them see you. If you're having trouble with dealing with a child, get one. I mean, Brother Levi may be moderating the invitation. He may be in a place that he might not be able to get down on the platform. If he's available, get him. Brother David's right here. Ask Brother David.
And if you have any discipline problems, just one look at Brother David will scare him to death if he's having a bad ball morning, right?
but all of us will be around during the service, and especially the invitation, we'll be mindful of the fact that might be. I'd say a word if they go to the altar. Say a word about kids going to the altar.
If they go to the altar, you know, you might have your entire group. I know in junior church, I have, not because of any of my preaching, but I have a hefty altar call response because that's what our kids have been trained to do. They respond to preaching that way. And there's some Sunday mornings when I stand up there guiding the invitation, and I'm looking around and I'm not hitting any of the kids that go to the altar. But there are some certain Sunday mornings where I jump down and I see a kid and God nudges my heart and says, talk to that kid, deal with that kid. If you have a camper go to the altar and you feel like God is saying, like you've seen it over them all day, every time they've heard preaching, they're shifting in their seats, they're white-knuckling the pew, you're beginning to say, hey, wow, they're on the edge of salvation. If they're not locking eyes with anybody, if they're raising their hand, and the preacher asks them if they need to be saved, that's pretty good indication that they might be going to the altar.
That's why we leave you with them 24/7 during camp. It's that relationship you're building.
Your relationship with God and your relationship with
Brother
Him
David.
is going to influence how you lead them. Point number 4, using the Roman roads is not a divinely inspired route for salvation for every single individual. I've seen children walk down under authentic conviction, ready just to ask God to save them, repent and ask God to save them, and then somebody take through every verse in the Romans road by the textbook, even the ones in John, 2 Thessalonians, jumping back to 1 Chronicles with a couple of the census details. That is not always true.
And by the time you got through those, the child was no longer in a spiritual mind to let God do something. Those scriptures are important.
Yes,
but
they are
discern
divinely
enough to pray
inspired.
with them, get them saved, and then you, after you rejoice with them, you can go over and sit down and say, let me show you what just happened to you.
Yes, that is the most important part. The scriptures are divinely inspired. Following the Romans road is something somebody came up with that's an effective tool for winning people to Christ that have no idea how to be saved. Some of these kids are coming parent-brought kids that have been in church ever since they were breathing.
We've got little guys who go as much salvation.
It's probably worth saying, Brother Levi, that for our workers that are coming online that have never been to junior camp, I know we've got folks from Woodland that are coming down. We've got folks from Stanton, Virginia, with some new workers that are coming in that have never attended one of our junior services. I think you're going to be in for a treat, because if you think this is going to be puppets and skits, you're going to be disappointed. We have a little more liberty in the morning to be a little more silly and a little more fun with the kids, but we come in the evenings after a couple of traditional camp songs to get them hooked in. It's preaching, it's singing, it's special music. And unless the Lord doesn't do anything for us this year, it'll be worship. It's been services that, as we say in the Baptist Ram, have got out of the banks. And with that emotion is going to come an emotional response. Don't hesitate to slip down beside one of your children in the altar, one of your campers in the altar, and say, can I help you pray about something? And you may be surprised. They may be a legitimate need on their heart, not related to salvation, a sick parent, a sibling that's in trouble, whatever the case might be. Don't hesitate to be their friend in that regard and pray with them. But don't try to lure them into a salvation experience that God has not touched their heart for. Or a doubt situation.
Yes,
don't send them home doubting. Okay?
Yes. As much as we've got to be careful with conviction, that's one of the points that I wanted to hit. Use your facial expressions and word choice. Make those choices lightly. Don't make them lightly. Take great care, because just as much as we don't want somebody that has a false profession, we don't want a kid that's going to return to teen camp every year struggling with doubt because of the person's response that was working with them in the altar of the night they got saved.
Right.
We want them to have a clear idea that's not you. Congratulations if you get one that is saved, because you just got to witness the greatest event of that person's life. Some people view accolades and awards, winning PGA tournaments, winning Super Bowls as the greatest thing that could happen in somebody's life. We view salvation as the greatest single event in a person's life, and you just got to witness that. Got a couple of questions. I'll deal with the services just in a moment, and deal with a couple of the behaviors things. Let them tell. Please let them tell. Don't just carry them back to the pew. Grab one of our attentions.
That's mandatory on our part. Is you get them to the moderator of the meeting, or the preacher, one of the preachers in the meeting.
I'll get over. Do you think we covered salvation?
I do. I want to say one more little thing about, you may cover it in a minute, but just regarding worship, you're going to get in on this, and you need to get in on it, but at the same time, don't get in on it so much yourself that you forgot you've got a dozen campers.
Yes.
And that's where,
Hey.
let me say, that's where the other two are there. If somebody, if your team lead is in the glory, and that could very well happen. If that's the case, the other two need to make sure you're looking around, and then if that person, it settles back down and somebody else gets happy on the team.
Yeah.
Just that's the great benefit of having two or three leaders. You can involve yourself in the meeting too. Just the other. If you're a helper, you need to understand. Hey, my team lead's having a time. I need to be aware of where the kids are.
Yeah, and Brother Mark, you and your team lead assistants are not the only ones that are going to be in the room.
Yes.
Brother Mark's wife is usually there. My wife is there. Other ladies are there. Other men are there. That you'll see them from registration on. And if things are if you've got 5 or 6 kids that need to be dealt with and you can't deal with them all, get our attention. We've got ways to help you with that. You're not stranded. You're not out on a limb by yourself. But sometimes it's a 2,000 seat auditorium, and we've got a lot going on. Sometimes you have to get our attention.
Right. Yes. Specifically with junior camp, I know that Brother Gene will be watching in the morning. I'll be watching in the morning. If I see a group that, if we're in the middle of a great service and I'm attempting to moderate, it's going to be a very busy time for us trying to discern what God's doing. With teen camp, I know with Preacher and Brother Dwayne moderating those services, we're trying to find out what God's direction, and unless you're taking care of your group, we can't possibly monitor every individual in that room, even with 120 junior campers and even with 500 teen campers. That's just going to be impossible for a single person. Somebody asked, can the campers sing specials in the service? In years past, junior camp, we've allowed them to sing specials. In years past, in teen camp, that has been the promotion of the camp. We make a camp choir. If you sing specials with junior camp, let myself and Brother Gene Trask know that. Don't approach it like this. God wants me to sing tonight. Please just let me know that you do sing. And if it's between you and God and He's told you that you're going to sing tonight, I want to be ready because chances are He's going to let me in on that same information.
That's not a bad idea.
But the campers sing specials in service. Yes, we're more than delighted if that's the direction God is moving. Don't get your feelings hurt. I'm trying to follow God's ability to discern which way the service wants to go. Brother Dwayne's the same way. Preacher's the same way. Yeah. Several people that we say no to. It's not because we don't like your singing.
If we let everybody that wanted to sing or testify at teen camp testify or sing at teen camp, we would be there till the next week,
yes,
and we still wouldn't have everybody covered. So it just isn't possible sometimes.
That is true.
This is not necessarily related to service, but it is kind of related to a text we just got. But if something happens, if a situation comes up, last year we had a room end up with some lice infestation.
Yes.
If you, as a cabin lead, make a big deal out of that, then it is going to become a catastrophe.
Yes.
But if you minimize it and let the adult staff take care of it, everything goes along amazingly well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Don't panic. Don't. If you see a snake in the grass, don't scream and yell and everybody run. I mean, there's just things you just don't do. You got to use a little discernment.
Because that could greatly embarrass a child.
Correct.
Yes. My wife actually worked at a camp in a mountain setting where they would go on a 2-mile hike with a group of campers, and they would regularly see snakes on the hike, and so they developed a code word. They would refer to the snake as with Eve in the garden. There's somebody with Eve in the garden. And immediately all the staff members understood there's a snake laying somewhere on this trail. We need to get these kids away. I'll never forget with Brother David Ballinger, we thought it would be a great idea at Sand Mountain to take a group of juniors out into the woods and then leave them stranded in the middle of the woods. We're at Sand Mountain. It was a completely isolated camping area. And if we were to run around and then scare them from the other side, sort of snipe hunting in the middle of the daytime, not at night. And then we ran across the largest copperhead I have ever witnessed in my entire life. And so God pulled that completely out of us. Don't make
amazing
big
what
deals.
God does, isn't it?
If it's lightning, don't tell your campers we're all going to die. Just get them hustled into the nearest location. Remain calm. Please don't do that sort of thing. Don't make a big deal out of anything.
Let's talk about canteen before you do your do's and don'ts, if that's okay. Of course, at junior camp we have canteen, and this is a refresher for those that have helped us in the past and a primer for those of you that are new. Junior camp canteen is different than teen camp canteen. The young people that you have in your control will not have money on them. When they come in and register, we take their canteen money and we put it on account for them. Each team lead will be given a little book with a page for each camper, and each time you go up to the camp canteen window and the child gets whatever they get, the drinks and candy, and the person tells you the total that's working the canteen, then you just simply subtract it, and it'll be your responsibility or your team assistant's responsibility to make sure you keep up with and help your kids monitor and manage their money so that they've got some money to spend Monday night and Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday night. Now, having said that, you're not their mother, and unless they have some dietary restriction, you're not to try to keep them from buying the chocolate or the candy just because you don't want to deal with it.
Give them Skittles and Mountain Dew.
They only have 2 days at camp. Make it a great experience for them. They may not get that at home, but they're not at home. They're at camp, all right? And so, obviously, if you've been given a child that's a diabetic, you got to work through that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying.
Please don't give a diabetic child honey buns and expect them to go to sleep.
It came to my attention that we had a cabin leader last year that would not let his children have anything but waters because he didn't want to deal with the caffeine sugar rushes. But we need to deal with the caffeine and sugar rushes, okay?
Yes.
And they'll also be given an opportunity to give an offering out of that canteen money. Yeah, they understand. But that got my thoughts completely off. But at Canteen, let them enjoy that. The offering, you'll have an opportunity to help them understand what that's about. Yes. And then on the last day, we will give back to you to give out at breakfast. And I only have one church group that collects those. The rest of our church groups, usually the kids go right to the canteen and spend it before they go home. So that's how Canteen operates, and it's in your area of responsibility. Okay. For your sake, you can keep a running tab on yourself. You just have to pay it at the end of the week.
Your responsibility is to make them have fun. At junior camp, it is my responsibility to make them tired. Yeah. And I can promise you, your children will need a caffeine rush
exactly right.
to make it dragging into bed every night. So let them have the Mountain Dews and the Skittles because they are going to be exhausted. Your job is to make it fun. My job is to make it all happen. And that's the same with Preacher and Brother Dwayne at teen camp. Canteen, we've covered that. Cassidy Nix wanted to know, what do we do if kids get too rowdy? Find the epicenter. That means the individual responsible for making it rowdy. You can usually pick up the two boys that are running around the room or the two girls that are giggly in the corner. Put those individuals and say, all right, listen, ladies, this behavior is not tolerated. This is a strike for each of you if you wanted to use that system. Or you could talk to them and say, look, I'm not going to tolerate this happening again. The next time it happens, you will face consequences. That consequence might be sitting out or 5 minutes taking off the lights out. Make them go to bed
absolutely.
earlier.
And I'd say this for you younger assistant leaders. If you're having trouble with some kids, find your older team lead. Okay. And if the kids aren't listening to you, find your older team lead. And then if they don't listen to the older team lead, they'll come find Brother Dwayne, myself, or Brother Levi, and they can listen to us. So if they won't listen to you, go to the next step up, and then the next step up. So
let me address just a little bit about your arrival. It is our preference that you arrive on Sunday afternoon, okay? If you cannot, there are certain circumstances, we understand that. You need to be here by 8 a.m. Monday morning, 8 a.m., because campers begin arriving at 9, okay? We can use you on Saturday before. That will be the 20, help me, Brother Mark.
that'll be the
30, 29, 28?
28th.
That'll be the 28th because we have a lot of work to do. Mm-hmm. We clean everything, we set up beds, we get organized and situated, so there's a lot of work to do on Saturday the 28th. We can certainly use you. You can come in. There'll be a place provided for you to stay. You'll go to church with me on Sunday, and then we come back for our God and Country service at 3:30 on Sunday afternoon. We can have a little bit of refresher Sunday night about some things you need to know. But when the kids start arriving, and we officially start at 9, but some will start getting here by 8:30. And it'll move very quickly. Yes. And each child has to be escorted to those dorms. Yes. And so what we do is we'll pull in you and your 2 assistants and probably some of the kitchen staff, the younger kitchen staff. And when that group registers, we split them up and we say, okay, 7-year-old girls go here, 9-year-old boys go here, and so forth. And we send them off to your area. The sooner you begin to build that relationship, hello, good to see you. Remember, they're scared, especially if they've never been before. But I'm glad you're here. Let's find you a bunk. You like the top or the bottom, blah, blah, blah. And we'll get that situated, comment about their backpack they brought or whatever it is. And then one lead will stay in that dorm area. One of the cabin counselor people will stay in that dorm area. The other 2 will be running back and forth, getting those kids in. So don't linger. Don't go off with your friends. Yeah. You may have a little bit of a lull, but get back down there to that fellowship hall because registration's in full swing, okay?
Let me say this. When they start getting there, it's work time.
Yes.
When we need you, we don't need to be having to send for you. You don't need to be out. If you're playing with your campers, that's another thing, but not just two or three buddies that are workers out, under the trees chewing the cud. When the kids start getting there, we've got to have your help. And let me just say this. There's going to be a lot of times when things get to moving quickly, Brother Levi, myself, Brother Dwayne, we may look at you and say, I need you to go do this. And it may sound like we're being very straightforward, but we don't have time to necessarily come over, pat you on the back, and say, "Man, would you please go do this? I need some water right now."
I'm not going to do that anyway.
Whatever it might be, and say, let's say Brother Levi's told you to do something, and I look at you and say, "Hey, I need you to go do this," and you say, all you need to do is say, "Brother Mark, Brother Levi's asked me to do this," and I'll find somebody else. But just understand, some of you that are not coming, a lot of times once it starts moving, once kids start getting there, I mean, there's not going to be really a lot of a law.
Don't carry your feelings on a shoulder like, I can't believe Brother Levi spoke to me that way or Brother Dwayne barked at me. You just got to understand it was in that particular moment that we're doing the very best we can do to get those kids in and get camp underway.
Yes. And if you've got 2 things coming at you, understand Brother Levi may have 10 things coming at him, that we're trying to get done. So
10 times, 10 to the power of 2. Hey, and then on the last morning, we will give you very explicit instructions about how to get your children, your young people's luggage together and double check the room, make sure everything's in place. We'll give you all those instructions. We don't have to go over it today. Listen to us, okay? Follow them. We'll tell you where to have them bring their bags. That's all done before the morning service. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, then it makes departure very easy because a lot of times the church groups come in and pick up their bags and so forth before you ever come out of the sessions. I think that's all as far as orientation registration. I will need all workers to communicate with me when they will be arriving. I need you to communicate with me if you intend to go to Pigeon Forge with the group. And try to get in on Saturday. And if you can't get in on Saturday, at least get in on Sunday so that you'll be here to help us.
If you're local and you need to be in your Sunday night service, it's all right to come on to camp after the Sunday night. Yeah, we would rather have you, honestly, we would rather have you Sunday night after your service than we would Monday morning. Just come on in Sunday night if you can, even if it's after your church service.
Correct. That's exactly right. But communicate with me by email, preferably Moore, Moore, Dwayne, Duane, that's all small letters, Moore Dwayne, one word, at earthlink.net. But I need to hear from you. I need to make sure I've got that information. If you want to go to Pigeon Forge, you'll have to let me know that this week. That is this coming week, because I have to start letting Dollywood know how many's coming and reserving our seats at the dinner show that we're going to. So you got to let me know that information. I need to know when you're coming in. And if you owe me paperwork, or if you're 18 or older and you owe me a background check, you've got to get that to me ASAP. Any questions, contact me. My phone number, 770-530-7957, or email mooredwayne@earthlink.net.
We've compiled a list of things not to do at camp. This is supposed to be humorous and honest, because this is stuff that really has happened at camp before. We've covered some of these already in the session, but I'll just read the list as we go down. Never yell at your children unless it is involved getting them out of the way of moving vehicles, lightning, or encouraging them to run home and kick ball. Do not pull pranks involving injury or destruction of property. E.J. Reese, just don't pull pranks at all. Do not look to get even with Brother Mark Stroud. It will not happen. Do not mess up Brother Dwayne's workspace. It looks very messy and completely disorganized, but he will notice a toothpick missing and then quote you the addressed cost of said toothpick. Do not exit the showers and go into your dorm room dressed in the outfit of Eden. Do not upset the kitchen staff. You'll be dining at this location for 2 weeks. Do not act like the campers. We were supposed to be the example. Do not act, in the words of Brother Tony Hudson, too cool for Sunday school. When it comes to games, activities, and other embarrassing exercises, your camper's motivation is directly linked to your involvement. Mount Sinai girls, I don't care what the activity is going to do to your hair or makeup, you will be participating when you sign your name on the volunteer line. I'm being hard on South Carolina today, I'm sorry. Also, if we go swimming, you're swimming with the campers. If you're not, you will be.
We are swimming this year. You need to tell them that. Probably
yes, we are swimming at the Riverside facilities this year. We're segregating boys and girls. But you will be swimming with your group. Specifically, if you've got the younger group of junior campers, you better be in the pool. If you're not in the pool, you will be in the pool before we leave.
You come dressed and prepared to swim just like your campers.
Swimming clothes or your regular clothes.
That's
and
exactly.
Get in the jumpies. Get in the water games.
Play with them.
Never leave your wet clothes in your bag if you're planning on being with Brother Dwayne for the entire summer. They will smell wonderful at the end of the
listen to
camp
that.
season. Never paint my car at junior camp. Kelly, not Piercy anymore. She's
Dustin
Bonham. Kelly Bonham. It never gets washed. My car never does, and my wife gets very embarrassed by December. Never make fun of Brother Nathan Nix or Brother David Martin for baldness. She-bears might not come out of the wilderness, but you will begin to bald awkwardly yourself. Miss Amy and Miss Melissa are Miss Amy and Miss Melissa. They are individually responsible for commandments number 11 through 35 if anybody's keeping tabs. Do not make a noise outside Brother Nathan's camper at night. He's the one making sure your toilets and showers and air conditioners work all week. Do not keep cabin workers up all night with your useless conversation. Ladies, I do not care how cute he looked in his suit. You need sleep. Never be outside of the shower area without being fully dressed. Your campers are devious. Never contemplate the idea of mooning a camper, regardless of how funny your other cabin leaders deem the behavior.
Or any other.
If you give swirlies, you will get a swirly. He'll give you one.
If you don't know what that is, that's good. Don't ask.
Don't ask. Yeah.
Good. No questions on that.
Brother Levi, quick story. I was reminded of this from Sand Mountain Days many years ago that they actually had a lice outbreak on campus and had prepared a brief letter. In those days, the exiting campers, actually the cabin counselors took them to the parents or whatever, and so they gave copies of this letter folded up in a nice envelope to the cabin leads and said, now when the parents come, make sure every parent gets one of these with their child that goes home. One of the cabin leads was telling them, this is just a small token of appreciation for sending your kid to camp. Didn't know what the letter was.
We appreciate your investment. We sent your child home with possible outbreak of lice.
I've got that for you, Miss Allison Church. Just
What should I do? As always, we don't want to concentrate on the negatives as much as the positive. You should develop a personal relationship with every child. You should question each one of them at one point in the week about their soul. You should learn their names quickly and never forget them. You should love them wholeheartedly and unconditionally. You should mimic the life of Christ and invest in the ones who never get investments. You should pray for them before you ever meet them. You should cry by the time they leave you at the end of the week. You should miss them and think on them throughout the following year. You should show them the best example of Christianity possible. You should be their mother, father, and their older sibling the entire time they're with you. You should give every minute to them. You should devote all your effort in making an impact on them. You should have the time of your life with every camper. You should be stern when needed, approachable when necessary, but always available for each of them. You should be the epitome of a Christian servant to them, taking their trays, cleaning their messes, and smiling at them continually. You should have inside jokes with them, sing songs with them, pray with them and over them. You should let them see you worship and serve God in the same week. You should make them think they're the only reason you're at camp. You should let them see your heart break over them. And you should be the best volunteer on the premises. That's what we should do at camp every year.
one little practical thing. Don't administer any first aid or medications to your campers. If they need that, we are fortunate this year. Miss Allison Church is coming in. She's a registered nurse. And if they need a Tylenol or, need a Band-Aid or something, she'll be able to handle that. And we don't want that liability. We want to let a professional take care of that. So make sure you keep that in mind.
If you are watching this in the future, if you were not able to watch this as far as live, you're actually watching a recorded version of this. The volunteer handbook has now been posted on the website. You can print it out, look at these. But if you are watching this in a recorded session, you can look and find that handbook on the website, print it out, and read it as Brother Levi is going through it.
Brother Dwayne, am I on, Brother Dwayne? Yep. Brother Dwayne brought up an interesting point just then, and it's something we struggle with in the professional education world. Contact with children in and outside of camp through social media. Approaching this very carefully, we do have avenues to get in contact with 12-year-old kids. Is that a good idea for you as a 20-year-old person to be in contact with a 12-year-old kid? No. Do not be the one that solicits the friend request for that child on Facebook. If that child
Ask for their
contacts
email
you,
or phone number.
I actually had somebody do this to me just the other day. A child sent a friend request to me, and then the parent contacted me and said, hey, my kid wants to add you as a friend on Facebook. Do you mind if that happens? Me personally, I didn't mind. I was more interested in whether or not the parent minded. But the parent went ahead and contacted me. You might backtrack that same idea, contact the parent of that child, find out who they are, and say, look, your kid's just added me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, something. Is it okay that this happens? I don't mind contacting them. I don't mind sending them a message. Most parents, if you're done your job as a counselor and those kids are going home, we love, we love them, and they were great. They were fantastic, and all they hear is good reports out of their kid and you, and their kids telling them they read their Bible, they prayed, this is what we did. I would love for my boys to have somebody like that in their life. So, yeah,
I would say, practically speaking, if you get that permission for a parent, get it on an email, a text,
yes, and
take a screenshot of that.
Yes, save it
that
for
way.
yourself.
If that is ever brought back into question, you have got a proof that it was acceptable in those parents' eyes for that to be done. That way, you are protected in case it ever comes back and says, well, they are inappropriately contacting my children. Please save that email, archive that email, save that screenshot, whatever it might be. The website address is www.powerof2youthcamp.net. www.powerof2, that's the number 2, youthcamp.net.
And one thing's peculiar about that, if you visit that site and just search for it through Google, for some reason, the 2011 site has resurrection power. It appears, just one page of it appears every single year. We were just sitting in Preacher's office yesterday, and the 2011 site just popped up. I don't know what it is about that site. We've cleared it completely off the server, but that site still pops up. But if you will, type that directly into the address bar, www.powerof2, the number, youthcamp.net.com or .org gets you there. And the volunteer handbook is on that under the volunteer tab. It'll say the volunteer handbook.
We're even talking about camp and it starts to rain.
Yes.
Hey, thank you.
Yes.
Brother Mark and I, and of course Brother Levi would chime in here, but we're mindful of the fact that we could not have either camp without volunteers, okay? We couldn't have either camp without volunteers, but we particularly couldn't have a junior camp without the level of volunteers and the direct interactive action of those volunteers that you provide for us. I mean, we're still recruiting and we're still trying to line up. And every year our camp grows, we have to have more because, to be honest, in total workers, including cabin leads and the kitchen assist staff, not our kitchen cooks, but our kitchen assist staff and administration, we probably maintain somewhere in the range of about a 1-to-4 ratio with our kids. And to be honest, we're not looking to change that because that's safe. It means your children are well taken care of, and it means that we are investing properly in their lives. So please keep that in mind. Thank you for coming. I do hope you'll join us to go to Pigeon Forge. We have a great time. We had 80 last year. We'll have that many this year. You'll have a great time. So keep that in mind, if you will, and we appreciate all you do for us.
Thank you very much. God bless you. Make sure you get in contact with Brother Dwayne, all those things he needs from you, and we look forward to seeing you at camp.